was younger, in seminary and even before that, the priests, the wise, experienced, spiritually holy priests and other mentors, adults in my life, my parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older, wiser people, used to say, and perhaps many of you have heard the same thing, that nothing good happens after 9 p.m. And I think in general, that is good advice. I'm one, if you know me, you know that I generally try to go to bed at 9 p.m. So that I can get up early and have that quiet in the morning. But there are a few very big exceptions to that rule. In fact, our two biggest feast days in the church's liturgical year, that is this day, Christmas, and Easter, both commemorate events that happened in the middle of the night. Perhaps the two greatest events in the history of humanity, in the history of the world. The birth of Christ, God becoming man, taking on our flesh, taking on our human nature, and his resurrection from the dead. Both happened in the middle of the night, in the quiet, when no one was around, when no one was there to see it, really, except for, of course, Mary and Joseph and the shepherds. But I think it's significant that Jesus comes and he rises from the dead in the middle of the night, in the dark. Because we know, as we hear from the testimony of Scripture, as we hear from the church's liturgy, from the prayers that we say on this feast day, on the Feast of Easter, that Christ is the light. Simeon, on the Feast of the Presentation, will recall how Simeon, when Jesus was brought to the temple, came to Jesus and called him a light of revelation to the nations. The one who came in the midst of darkness, in the midst of the chaos of this world, the midst of the darkness and the suffering and the slavery and the oppression of sin, and brought light to the world, who brought people back to God, to be reconciled to him. And it didn't happen in the middle of the day. It didn't happen when everyone was around to see it. It didn't happen in the midst of this great show or spectacle or something like that. It happened in the quiet. It happened in the dark. It happened when everyone else was asleep. And oftentimes I've come to know and to realize in my own life that oftentimes that's the way Jesus works in our lives too. Jesus doesn't often have these big spectacles, right? Jesus doesn't strike the ground with lightning when I try to do something that's bad, right? He doesn't often speak to me through a sound system or call me on the phone or something like that, right? All throughout Scripture, there's witness of men and women encountering the Lord in the quiet, encountering the Lord when there's no one else around. Mary at the Annunciation, Elijah on the mountain of Carmel, right? The shepherds in the middle of the night, the three kings that we'll celebrate at Epiphany. All throughout Scripture, all throughout the history of the church, we have the constant witness of the importance of silence in our lives, the importance of quiet, the importance of doing away with all of the distractions of the world so that we can see and we can focus on the one thing that truly matters, that Jesus wants to come to us. Jesus wants to enter our lives. He wants to enter our lives the same way that he entered Mary and Joseph's life, the same way that he entered into this lineage of people, right? All the way back from Abraham to Joseph, this great lineage of the house of Israel, filled with some of the greatest people in the history of Israel and many of the worst. Jesus wanted to enter them. He wanted to go into the brokenness of their family, the brokenness of their lives, the brokenness and the oppression and the sin in the midst of the people of Israel. And he wants to come in the midst of our sin as well. He wants to come in the midst of our brokenness, in the midst of our suffering, in the midst of our darkness. And he wants to bring his light, and he wants to shine it on those areas of our life that are most dark, so that in revealing them, both to us and to the Lord's mercy can enter those areas. And he can bring his healing, and he can bring freedom, and he can bring peace and love and joy. And so as we celebrate this great feast, this great moment where Christ becomes one of us, we ask for the grace to be open. We ask for the grace to allow the Lord's light to penetrate our hearts and shine its light everywhere, so that wherever we are broken, wherever we are dark, wherever we are suffering, wherever we need the mercy of God, that mercy can shine. And that mercy can bring us what we need. That mercy can bring us God's grace. And God's grace can transform us. And being transformed, we can enter more fully into the one thing we were created for: to be in a relationship, to be drawn into the relationship that God is in himself, to share his own divine life, just as he came to share our humanity.